Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in life when holding on starts to feel heavier than letting go. And I don't know who this is for, but God sent you here today for clarity. You've been praying, crying, asking for a sign, and tonight this message is that sign. When peace leaves a relationship, it doesn't always make a loud exit. Sometimes it slips out quietly in the middle of a conversation that didn't sit right. Sometimes it walks away after the third time you had to explain why you're hurt and they still didn't get it. It's not always chaos that signals God is telling you to let go. Sometimes it's just the absence of peace. That still unsettling feeling that something is off, that you're not growing here, that you're shrinking, bending, contorting yourself to keep the connection alive, even when your soul is tired of pretending. You see, peace is one of the greatest indicators of God's presence. The Bible says He's not the author of confusion, but of peace. And so when you're constantly in emotional turmoil, when your spirit is uneasy, when your thoughts are clouded with doubt and your heart feels heavy instead of held, that's not God. That's not where He wants you to stay. There's a difference between going through a storm with someone and living in a storm because of someone. And too many of us confuse long suffering with loyalty. We think we're being faithful by staying, but the truth is, sometimes we're just afraid of what life looks like without them. We'd rather suffer in silence than risk the unfamiliar. But just because you've been in it for a long time doesn't mean you're meant to stay. Some relationships are seasonal, and when the peace goes, that season may be over. You know what it feels like. That tightness in your chest before you speak your truth. The way you walk on eggshells around them, hoping this time they'll hear you, they'll see you. But God didn't create you to live in fear of being misunderstood. He didn't design your heart to be neglected. When someone consistently disrupts your peace, dismisses your boundaries, or leaves you emotionally empty, God may be showing you that their assignment in your life is complete. And let's be real, peace isn't always loud and dramatic. It's not about everything being perfect or easy. Peace doesn't mean the absence of problems. It means the presence of alignment. Even when challenges come, when peace is present, your soul still knows you're safe. You still feel seen. You're still growing. But when peace has left, even small conversations feel like battles. Your joy starts to dim. Your confidence begins to erode. You stop recognizing the version of yourself you've become around them. And that's a sign. Some of us are praying for clarity, and God has been giving it. We're just not listening. The arguments that keep happening over the same things. The way your spirit drops when their name pops up on your phone. The anxiety before every interaction. These aren't random emotions. They're alarms in your soul. God's way of whispering, this isn't it. You don't have to keep forcing this. But we stay hoping they'll change, hoping something will shift. And while we're waiting on them to transform, we're losing parts of ourselves. Let's talk about peace as a compass. When peace leaves, it's like your internal GPS rerouting you. It's telling you the road you're on isn't taking you to your purpose. And the longer you ignore that, the more lost you start to feel. God is not cruel. He's not trying to punish you by removing peace. He's trying to protect you, trying to shield you from what's ahead if you keep going down this road. But we miss it because we're too busy justifying their behavior, minimizing our pain, making excuses for why it's not that bad. But listen, your peace should never be the price you pay to stay connected to someone. You were made for more than surviving someone else's mistreatment. You were made for more than just being tolerated. Relationships should challenge you, yes, but they shouldn't crush you. Love should require growth, not constant recovery. And if the relationship leaves you feeling like you're in a constant state of emotional rehab, that's not love, that's labor, and that's not sustainable. Peace is a fruit of the Spirit. It's not a luxury. It's a sign of God's presence. So when it's gone, take notice. Start asking why. Start paying attention to what your spirit is trying to tell you. Sometimes we're looking for a big sign, a clear word, a dramatic moment. But more often than not, God speaks through subtle shifts, through the discomfort, through the restlessness, through that deep knowing that this person, this place, this version of your life, it no longer fits where God is trying to take you. Peace isn't just a feeling, this confirmation. And when it leaves, it's a sign you need to start moving. When you find yourself praying more about someone than you do about becoming who God called you to be, it's time to pause and take a closer look. There's nothing wrong with praying for people. We're called to intercede, to lift others up, to believe for their healing, their change, their breakthrough. But when your prayers start revolving more around fixing someone else than becoming the woman or man God destined you to be, something has shifted out of alignment. That's not intercession anymore. That's distraction. That's emotional entanglement. That's a heart so wrapped up in someone else's potential that you've forgotten your own. We've all done it. You start by praying for them because you care. You see their wounds, their struggles, their past. And your heart, so full of compassion, steps in like a spiritual paramedic, rescuing, patching, covering. But then weeks pass, months, and your journal is full of entries that read like battle reports, pleading with God to change them, to heal them, to make them love you better, see you clearer, value you deeper. And slowly, almost unknowingly, your focus has moved, your identity has shifted. Your spiritual energy is spent trying to manage them instead of maturing you, and that's not what God intended. See, when God calls you, He calls you. He gives you a purpose, a path, a promise. And when someone starts taking up more space in your mind than the vision God gave you, that's a red flag. That's not love, that's a detour, because no matter how deeply you feel for someone, you can't carry their calling and yours too. You can't be both the vessel and the answer. Only God can change a heart. Only God can soften, heal, restore. And while you're down on your knees praying for them, God is gently asking, what about you? What about the work I started in you? We lose ourselves like that, slowly, subtly. You stop dreaming because you're too busy praying they'll grow. You stop evolving because all your energy is being spent covering their chaos. Your spirit feels dry not because God left, but because your prayers are all pouring out towards someone who isn't pouring back. And instead of building your character, you're busy holding together someone else's brokenness. And sis or brother, that's not your assignment. There is a difference between supporting someone and substituting God in their life, between believing in them and becoming their foundation. When your prayers become desperate pleas to fix, to change, to hold on, ask yourself, where am I in this? Where is my peace? Where is my growth? Because God's desire is never for you to abandon yourself in the name of love. The Bible says to love your neighbor as yourself, not instead of yourself. Sometimes we use prayer as a way to delay obedience. We know deep down God is calling us to step back, to let go, to stop fighting for what's already fallen apart. But instead of releasing, we keep praying, hoping we'll see a different outcome. We pray harder, fast longer, ask for more signs. But prayer was never meant to be a bargaining chip. It's supposed to align us with God's will, not convince Him to change His mind. And here's what's real. If you're praying more about them than becoming you, that imbalance is going to catch up with your soul. You'll wake up one day and realize you've been so busy trying to help them find their light, you lost track of your own. You'll feel spiritually drained, emotionally exhausted, wondering why your passion feels dim and your purpose feels far. And the truth will hit you. You've been prioritizing someone else's potential over your own process. God doesn't want you stuck in spiritual survival mode, trying to resuscitate someone who doesn't want to breathe differently. He wants you to thrive, to grow, to step into everything He has for you. But if your prayers are always centered around someone who isn't even asking God for themselves, you're wasting oil. You're giving energy to something that may not be a divine connection, but a divine lesson. Sometimes the reason we're not progressing is because we're praying in the wrong direction. We're trying to hold on when God is saying, oh, let me handle this. And until you shift your focus back to your own journey, your own healing, your own becoming, you'll stay stuck in a cycle of intercession that produces no fruit. You'll keep praying for someone who's not connected to your future, while your future waits for you to stop looking back. When someone consistently drains you more than they develop you, it's a sign that the relationship has become a weight rather than a well. It takes more from you than it gives. You find yourself constantly pouring, constantly adjusting, constantly making room, but never being filled in return. Your energy is low, your joy is scarce, and your spirit is tired, not because life is too heavy, but because you're carrying someone who was never meant to be your burden. We often confuse connection with calling. Just because you feel something deeply doesn't mean it's divine. Just because you have history doesn't mean you're meant to have a future. Emotional investment can become emotional exhaustion when you're the only one showing up with intention. And while you're giving your best, they're giving the bare minimum. You're speaking life, encouraging growth, offering love, and all you get in return is silence, resistance, or worse, manipulation disguised as affection. Relationships are meant to stretch you, yes, but they shouldn't empty you. The people you surround yourself with should add value, not subtract it. They should fuel your fire, not constantly need you to relight theirs. When you leave a conversation feeling depleted instead of inspired, that's not iron sharpening iron, that's dullness dragging you down. You weren't made to be someone's emotional dump site. You weren't made to be the one who always has to fix, to soothe, to make peace while they stay the same. We try to rationalize it. No, we say things like, you're just going through a lot or they've had a rough past. And while empathy is beautiful, it becomes unhealthy when it turns into self-neglect. You can't keep pouring from an empty cup. You can't continue giving parts of yourself away to someone who refuses to grow, to change, or to even acknowledge the weight they put on you. Love is not a one-way transaction, and you deserve to be in spaces where your light isn't just noticed, it's nurtured. Let's talk about the emotional toll. The way you start second-guessing yourself, the way your confidence starts slipping, the way your mind races trying to interpret their silence or decode their moods. You weren't anxious before they came into your life. You weren't insecure before you kept being compared to an expectation you never agreed to carry. Slowly, without realizing it, your strength starts turning into survival. You're not thriving, you're tolerating. You spend more time trying to stabilize the relationship than stepping into your purpose. More time walking on eggshells than walking in peace, and it starts to show. Your focus is off, your creativity is dull, your spirit feels like it's under constant pressure because instead of being loved, you're being managed or worse, manipulated, and deep down you know it. You feel it every time you show up for them and they don't show up for you. Every time you speak life into someone who only brings dead energy into your space. Every time you sacrifice your time, your dreams, your vision, just to keep something that's slowly breaking you. You don't have to stay in a draining space just to prove you're loyal. You don't have to keep giving just to prove you're loving. Your worth is not measured by how much pain you can endure in someone else's process. There's a difference between helping someone grow and holding them up entirely. When you're carrying more than your share, that's not love, that's imbalance. And imbalance over time becomes damage. God did not call you to relationships that steal your strength. He called you to be connected to people who call you higher. People who challenge you with love, cover you in prayer, speak into your purpose, and match your energy with their own effort. But when all you're doing is giving and all they're doing is taking, that's not partnership, that's dependency. And if you don't recognize it, you'll start losing pieces of yourself trying to keep them whole. You start noticing it in how exhausted you feel after spending time with them, how emotionally foggy you get, how even your spiritual life feels heavier because their presence pulls on you more than it pours into you. That's not what God intends. He doesn't want you tied to something that continually bleeds you of your peace, your joy, your focus. There's no reward in staying where you're constantly It is and not sure. There's no spiritual prize for losing yourself in the name of love. When God keeps closing doors they try to open, that's not just a coincidence. It's direction. It's protection wrapped in redirection. You might not always recognize it in the moment because when your heart is invested in someone, you naturally want things to work. You want doors to open. You want opportunities to fall into place. You want everything to align so you can breathe and believe that this connection is meant to last. But what happens when the doors keep slamming shut, no matter how hard they try to push them open? At first, you call it bad timing. Then maybe you say it's spiritual warfare. You try to justify the patterns, ignore the red flags, and pray for breakthrough. But over time, you realize that this isn't just a random series of obstacles. This is God stepping in and saying, not this way. You see, when someone in your life is not aligned with your destiny, God will start creating roadblocks. And those roadblocks aren't punishments, they're mercy. Because God sees what you don't. He sees the conversations you're not privy to. He hears the intentions behind their words, feels the motives buried under their charm. And if he's closing doors, it's because he knows what lies on the other side isn't meant for you. We struggle with this because we don't want to believe that someone we care about might not be good for us. So we take closed doors as challenges instead of as clarity. We start trying to force what God is clearly trying to end. And the more we push, the more frustrated we become. Because God will never bless something that contradicts His will for your life. When He closes a door, it's not to punish your hope. It's to preserve your purpose. There are moments when you see them trying. You see them putting in effort, making plans, saying the right things. They talk about future, about change, about doing better. And maybe for a while it looks like progress. But every time they reach for something that would move the relationship forward, another door shuts. That job doesn't come through. That trip falls apart. That conversation turns into a fight. That opportunity somehow disappears, and you're left wondering why it never seems to work. The truth is, when someone's presence in your life is based on your will and not God's, He will interrupt it repeatedly. He'll start stripping away the things that keep you attached to them. He'll stop allowing the relationship to move forward. Not because He doesn't want you to be happy, but because He doesn't want you to be trapped. And sometimes the only way to get your attention is to let everything fall apart, piece by piece, until you stop trying to build something He never designed. We serve a God who opens doors no man can shut. But we also serve a God who shuts doors no man can open. And when someone keeps trying to pry open something God has already sealed, that's a sign. A sign that they're more committed to controlling the outcome than surrendering to God's plan. And if you're being honest, you felt it too. You felt the tension, the unease, the way things never quite settle. Every time you think it's finally coming together, it falls apart again. That's not failure, that's divine interference. It's painful to accept, especially when your heart is involved. You want to believe the best. You want to hope for change, but sometimes hope turns into denial, and denial turns into delay, and the longer you ignore the pattern, the more you risk missing what God is really trying to show you. The doors aren't closing because God forgot about you. They're closing because He hasn't. He loves you too much to let you settle in something that can't carry the weight of your calling. God knows what you need, even when you don't. He knows the kind of love that will nurture you, not just need you. The kind of partnership that will grow with you, not hold you back. And when someone keeps trying to reopen what God has already shut, that's a sign that their agenda isn't aligned with God's assignment. It may not mean they're a bad person. It just means they're not the right person for where you're going. You'll notice the pattern when you stop trying to make excuses for it. You'll see it clearly when you stop romanticizing what could be and start recognizing what is. Closed doors are painful, but they are also powerful. They force you to face what you've been avoiding. They bring clarity to places where you've only had confusion. They remind you that God's no is still love, even when it doesn't feel like it. When you find yourself compromising your calling to keep the connection, it's a clear sign that you've stepped out of alignment with God's purpose for your life. It's easy to get caught up in a relationship and start adjusting your values, your boundaries, and your dreams just to make it work. You start saying yes when your heart says no. You start compromising your vision, your integrity, and your priorities to keep someone else happy. But what happens when doing so begins to cost you more than it's worth? What happens when the very things that were once non-negotiable in your life start to seem flexible for the sake of keeping the peace, keeping the connection, or avoiding conflict? The danger of compromise in relationships is that it's rarely ever an immediate, obvious shift. It starts small. Just one little adjustment here, one tiny sacrifice there. You start canceling plans that were important to you because they're not important to them. You begin to dim your light because they're uncomfortable with your brilliance. You mute your dreams to accommodate theirs, and slowly the things that once lit you up begin to fade into the background. And then one day you look up and realize that you've been so busy trying to make someone else's world fit into yours that you've completely abandoned the very thing that made your world yours in the first place. Compromise is a slippery slope. At first, it feels like love. You think I'm doing this for them, I'm sacrificing for the relationship. I'm being selfless, but eventually you start to realize that you're not actually giving of yourself, you're losing yourself. God never intended for love to feel like a constant act of diminishing who you are for the sake of someone else's comfort. When your calling, your purpose, and your identity start getting sacrificed for the sake of connection, it's not love you're living out, it's dependency. And dependency never leads to growth. It only leads to a cycle of stagnation, frustration, and eventual burnout. It's easy to think that love means you should always accommodate, always adjust, always bend, and always put someone else's needs before your own. But love doesn't mean losing yourself. Real love isn't about erasing your individuality to make someone else feel comfortable. Real love is about coming together and lifting each other up. It's about challenging each other to be better versions of yourselves, not shrinking in order to fit into a mold that wasn't made for you. When you start compromising the things that matter most to you, it's a sign that you've shifted your focus from your purpose to the relationship itself. And relationships are never meant to be idols. You were created with a purpose. Your calling is unique to you. It's not just about what you're doing in the world, it's about who you're becoming. And when someone comes into your life and starts demanding that you make sacrifices that undermine who God has called you to be, it's time to reconsider the connection. No one, no matter how much you care about them, should ever ask you to put aside your calling to make them feel secure or to keep them happy. God didn't place you on this earth to dim your light for anyone. He placed you here to shine, to fulfill a purpose that only you can fulfill. When someone comes into your life and asks you to silence your calling, you're not serving them. You're denying God's plan for you. It's important to understand that compromise doesn't always look like giving up your dreams for a relationship. Sometimes it's the little things, the times you ignore your own needs, the moments you choose not to speak your truth, the times you avoid confrontation because you don't want to rock the boat. It's when you start adjusting your schedule to meet their demands, but you're too exhausted to pursue the things that fill your soul. It's when you prioritize their happiness over your own peace. And the longer you allow yourself to be caught up in that cycle, the harder it becomes to remember who you are, what you're called to do, and why you matter in the first place. God never calls us to relationships that take us away from Him. He calls us to relationships that bring us closer to Him, that push us toward our purpose and call us higher. Relationships should help you grow in your faith, in your character, and in your vision, not make you shrink, hide, or lose yourself. And when someone consistently asks you to compromise your calling, you have to ask yourself if this is the connection God has designed for you. Is this relationship helping you become the person God created you to be, or is it causing you to lose sight of who you are in Him? If the relationship is requiring more of you than you're able to give, and if it's draining your energy and focus in a way that pulls you away from your purpose, it's time to step back. Your calling is too important, your destiny is too great, and your future is too valuable to give up for a connection that doesn't honor the unique person you were made to be. You are not here to be someone else's emotional crutch, and you are not here to play small for anyone. You are here to walk in your divine purpose, to be the person God designed you to be, and to fulfill the calling He placed on your life. If the relationship doesn't support that, then it's time to let go. When someone repeatedly ignores your boundaries, it's a loud and clear signal that the relationship has become unhealthy. Boundaries are not just rules we set for others. They are the guardrails God gives us to protect our peace, our purpose, and our well-being. Boundaries help us define what's acceptable in our relationships and what isn't. They're not walls to keep people out, but instead, they are guidelines to ensure that we are honored, respected, and treated with the dignity we deserve. When someone consistently violates those boundaries, they're not just disregarding your needs, they're disrespecting who you are and what you stand for. At first, it's easy to brush it off. You tell yourself, oh, they didn't mean it that way. Or maybe they didn't realize how important that is to me. But when it keeps happening, when they keep pushing against your limits, when they ignore your words, when they test your patience and your boundaries repeatedly, it's no longer a misunderstanding. It's a pattern. And it's a pattern that is telling you something you need to hear. This person is not valuing you the way you deserve to be valued. Boundaries are essential for maintaining healthy relationships. They help us preserve our emotional, mental, and spiritual health. And they're not just about saying no to what we don't want. They're about saying yes to what we need. Saying no to a behavior that disrespects your space or your peace is an act of self-care and self-respect. When you allow someone to continually cross those lines, you're not just letting them overstep, you're allowing them to define your worth by their actions rather than the value God has already placed within you. But setting boundaries isn't always easy. Many of us have been taught to put others first, to be accommodating, and to overlook minor infractions because we don't want to cause conflict. We've been conditioned to believe that keeping the peace at all costs is more important than standing firm in our own needs. And in doing so, we allow people to walk over us, to ignore our limits, and to take advantage of our kindness. We tell ourselves that it's easier to let it go than to address it, that it's not worth the fight, that they'll change, or that we're being too sensitive. The truth, though, is that when we don't protect our boundaries, we end up feeling resentful. We feel drained, unseen, and unappreciated. We start to lose a sense of who we are because we've spent so much time focusing on others and ignoring the things that matter to us. When we allow others to take from us without regard for our limits, we're not showing love to ourselves, and we're certainly not showing love to the relationship. Instead, we're showing that we don't believe we're worthy of being respected, of being heard, of having our needs met. God created us with boundaries for a reason. He didn't design us to be endless reservoirs of giving with no regard for how much we have left to give. He doesn't expect us to be anyone's emotional punching bag or to tolerate behavior that erodes our peace. He wants us to be in relationships where we are both giving and receiving, where we are seen, heard, and valued. When someone keeps disregarding your boundaries, they're not only disrespecting you, they're also disregarding God's design for your life. And that's not something you should ignore. Now, it's important to recognize that sometimes people don't mean to cross our boundaries. Sometimes they don't even know they're doing it. But that doesn't make it okay. That's where communication comes in. Setting clear, honest, and firm boundaries is essential in relationships. If someone truly values you, they will listen and respect what you need. If they don't respect your boundaries after you've communicated them, that's a problem. Love doesn't mean constantly allowing someone to take advantage of your kindness. Love means respecting the person you're with, understanding their needs, and finding ways to build a relationship that honors both parties equally. And this isn't just about protecting yourself from others. It's also about protecting the relationship itself. A relationship that consistently disregards boundaries isn't a healthy one. It's a relationship that's built on imbalance, disrespect, and emotional exhaustion. And no matter how much you love someone, you cannot keep pouring into something that drains you without consequence. Over time, you'll lose yourself. You'll start to question your worth, your value, and your purpose. And that's exactly what happens when someone continues to ignore your boundaries. They begin to make you doubt what you deserve. But the truth is, you are worthy of respect. You are worthy of being heard. You are worthy of having your needs acknowledged and honored. And if someone truly cares about you, they will do the work to learn your boundaries and respect them. They will not manipulate, guilt, or pressure you into letting go of what's important to you. They will understand that your boundaries are not walls to keep them out. They are bridges to a healthier, more authentic connection. So when someone repeatedly ignores your boundaries, it's not just a sign that they don't respect you. It's a sign that this relationship may not be what God intended for you. It may be time to step back and reevaluate if this is a connection that is helping you grow or hindering your growth. Because no one should be able to consistently ignore what matters to you, and no one should be able to continually disregard your peace. You deserve more than that. You deserve a relationship that reflects the love, honor, and respect that God has for you.